What do you do when you have a 500 book TBR, ADHD, and you're a mood reader? You make the ultimate TBR jar. Hi, I'm Naomi from the Mixed Up Desk, and welcome to my channel. I have created this new system for myself to help me read the books on my shelf that I keep saying that I need to read ASAP, which is really like all of them, but I've narrowed it down a little bit. I created Indigenous Book Bingo to get people reading and promoting Indigenous books. I have a reader community and publishing imprint with Bindery books. It's called Bougie Books. We are currently looking for our first book to acquire. And if you want to support that, you can do that for free by following the link below, becoming a follower, and you get access to exclusive content, book clubs, author chats, giveaways, and more. I'm going to do a separate video covering all of the Indigenous books, but today I've picked out 5 to 6 books per genre, and sometimes a subgenre because I couldn't make up my mind because hello. And I am going to put them on a little piece of paper, put them in the jar, and then every month I'm going to choose one book from this jar, one book from Indigenous Book Bingo, my Indigenous Book Club book, my Women in Horror Book Club book, and then the rest will be for mood reading. Okay, let's start with novella because I only have 3 books under 200 pages that I'm adding to this list. The first is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nhi Vo. This is a feminist high fantasy and an indictment of monarchy. R.F. Kuang described this as a quiet, wrenching tale of resistance, resilience, and court intrigue. I cannot wait to read this. Next is The River Has Roots by Amal El-Motar. This is one of the co-authors of How to Lose a Time War, one of my favorite books. This is her first solo debut. Follow the river Liss to the small town of Thistleford on the edge of Ferry and meet 2 sisters who cannot be separated, even in death. Next is Ling Hun by Ai Zhang. This is a Bram Stoker award-winning horror novella that I have had on my TBR for way too long. I cannot wait to read this. This is a grief horror. Speaking of Stoker winners, I am adding The Daughters of Block Island by Krista Carmen, just because this doesn't really fit into one of my genres that were already full, but I was removing the shelf to make way for my TBR shelf right here. It will probably end up being 2 or 3 of these. And it was there and I was like, wait, no, I need to add that. So The Daughters of Block Island. This is a gothic horror. 2 sisters who have been strangers their entire lives. A salt-worn manor called Whitehall. Please, I need to read it right now. Okay, next is my dark academia-ish list, but doesn't have that many books. I've got Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. This has also been on my TBR forever. It's been haunting me. It's a gothic-infused debut of literary suspense set within a secluded elite university. I love a university setting. What can I say? The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova has been on my TBR the longest, and I also think it's one of the longest books on my TBR. This edition, oh, it doesn't even have pages. It's so long, LOL. Just kidding. It's 676 pages. That feels really long. I'm sure I've got something longer, though. Let me know if you've read this one. It is a hypnotic thrill ride through history. The next is Vita Nostra. This is by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. This is another dark academia, dark university thriller type book. All right, let's get into the romance now. If you don't know, I just recently started reading romance, so I am if you didn't know, I just started reading romance, so I am particularly interested in getting started on these reads. Aphrodite and the Duke by J.J. McAvoy. I picked this one up because it looked like a black Bridgerton. That's it. I can't wait. And it's a mass paper. Aphrodite and the Duke. I picked this one up because it looked like a black Bridgerton book. And I love a mass market paperback. I do. I chose The Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. Now, I haven't read any Ali Hazelwood yet, so this is going to be my first one. But I chose this because I felt like there was so much controversy. Like, is this kinky or not? I will be the judge of that, and I will tell you. You know, I'm thinking as I'm writing this next book down on the little piece of paper to put into my TBR jar, I'm thinking that whenever I pull one out, I'm going to put another one in that fits in the same genre. Okay, next I've got Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I think this is the first book in this cowboy romance series. If it's not, I'll just switch it out with the first one. I am so freaking obsessed with these covers. I hope I love this series as much as I love the covers. So Anna Maria and the Fox by Liana De La Rosa has probably been on my TBR since I started reading romance. It's one of the first ones that I picked up, so I need to get into it. Again, these covers are drawing me in. A forbidden love between a Mexican heiress and a shrewd... A forbidden love between a Mexican heiress and a shrewd British politician makes for a tantalizing Victorian season. Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. So I read Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto and I was absolutely obsessed with it. So I'm sure that I'm going to love this. This is about a wedding planner and her grumpy ex. I've got This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan on this list. I am super excited to read this. This will be my first Kennedy Ryan. This is about a woman who's just trying to keep a roof over her and her daughter's heads. And then she meets a brilliant single dad and the last man she should ever consider dating. Is she brave enough to take a risk? Okay, now we're moving into the YA books. Starting off strong with Tiffany D. Jackson's Monday's Not Coming. I have a ton of books by this author on my TBR. This one, everyone keeps telling me that I absolutely needed to read. This is a YA thriller. The story about how my best friend disappeared, how nobody noticed she was gone except me, and how nobody cared until they found her 1 year later. Hell Followed With Us is a YA trans horror about a boy on the run from the cult that raised him. This is the second book that I'll be reading by Andrew Joseph White. I already read The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, which is so good. I cannot wait to read this. They Bloom at Night by Trang Tan Tran. This is a YA horror. This is the author of She is a Haunting, which I absolutely loved. This book is about a teen searching for a future where she can finally be free. Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson. Absolutely adoring this cover as well. This is a YA mystery. I think there's a comp to Agatha Christie here. And rounding out the YA list is Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Rounding out the YA is Ace of Spades. This has been a book that has been on my TBR forever. Probably one of the first books that I got when I got on Book Talk, and I still haven't read it. So this is the year, guys. This is the year. Okay, so next I'm doing my indies, and I have got Merciless Waters by Ray Knowles. This is a visceral, sexy, and sweetly romantic tale of jealousy and revenge. Merciless Waters is a vengeful fever dream drowned in salt water. Oddblood by Azalea Crowley, cozy horror with vampires. And Gold Rush by Chris Williams. This is a gay cowboy horror. Masquerade by O.O. Sangoyomi. This cover took me out. I got this half price at Books Inc. because they're going out of business. And I cannot wait to read this based on the cover alone. This is a bewitching, thrilling, and vibrant novel that had me enthralled with every twist and turn. The next two I feel like were very popular books last year, and that is The Ministry of Time and Blood Over Bright Haven. I feel like people could not stop talking about these two books. Now, the two books that follow were really popular the year before. Well, one of them has been popular for years, but we'll get into that in a second. Okay, so as you see, I had to already clear out another shelf for the continuation of my TBR, and I found The Past is Red, which is another novella. Okay, so as you see, I had to clear out another shelf for my TBR to continue, and I found another novella that I wanted to add. The Past is Red by Catherine M. Valenti. I feel like this is a book that people talk about a lot as well. Magical realism meets the garbage patch. That's a very interesting way to describe a book. Okay, anyways, I got sidetracked. We're talking about science fiction and fantasy and the popular books that I have added to my absolutely must read this year, please, TBR. And that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir and Piranesi by Susanna Clark. If I don't read them this year, that's it. I'm unhauling them. I need to do it. I feel like the 5 nonfiction books are interesting. The ones that I selected. I selected The Man Who Could Move Castles. Castles is not the title of this book. It's not. No. Okay, so then let's move on to my nonfiction. I feel like I chose a nice selection perfect for me. The first book is The Man Who Could Move Clouds. This is by Ingrid Rojas Contreras. It's a memoir with an absolutely gorgeous cover. She is local to me. And then The Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. This is how fungi make our worlds, change our minds, and shape our futures. I'm obsessed with mushrooms. If you didn't know that about me, I am not a hike deep into the forest without a trail kind of person, but I like to take pictures of them from the trail. Okay, and then Sick Houses, Haunted Homes and the Architecture of the Dead by Layla Taylor. Horror begins at home. From family homes in Amityville to Gothic mansions in Los Angeles and the Unabomber's cabin, houses often capture and contain the horror that has happened within them. How good does this sound? The Age of Deer by Erica Hauser. Trouble and kinship with our wild neighbors. As a nature person, as soon as I saw this on the table at the bookstore, picked it up, no question, went to the checkout, let's go. What's really cute is I noticed I've been stacking all these books and not writing them down on my little piece of paper to put in my TBR jar. So I'm going to do that right now. Be right back. And then I'm adding Magical Realisms, Essays on Music, Memory, Fantasy, and Borders by Vanessa Angelica Villarreal. Cover. I love a good collection of essays, and I cannot wait to read this one. Okay, now we're going to get into thriller and mystery. And the first one I've got on there is Leave the Girls Behind by Jacqueline Bublitz. Ruth Ann is a college dropout, a bartender, and an amateur detective who just can't stay away from true crime. A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing gives a whole new meaning to the dangers of modern dating. The Hollywood Assistant by May Cobb. Listen, I love a thriller set in LA. The Searcher by Tana French. Tana French is one of my favorite mystery writers. She does it so good. If you haven't read Into the Woods yet and that series, highly, highly recommend it. There are only 2 books left by her that I haven't read. It's The Searcher and The Hunter. The Searcher goes first. We're getting into it this year. Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. A father goes missing. His family's desperate search leads them to question everything they know about him. Hello? What did he do? Okay, now I am going to rapid fire these What? Okay, I'm going to rapid fire these poetry collections that I'm adding. Crossroads by Dre Hill. 10 Bridges Burnt by Bronte. Okay, I am going to streamline through these poetry collections that I'm adding. First, I have Crossroads by Dre Hill. I've got 10 Bridges I've Burnt by Bronte Purnell. I got Woke Up No Light by Layla Motley. Freedom House by KB Brookins. Find Me as the Creature I Am by Emily Jungmin Yoon, and Scorched Earth by Tiana Clark. Love a poetry collection. Definitely had to add these. So it's looking like I'm going to probably have to clear one more shelf here, which means I've got to find a little place for my friends and for my witch shit. You know what I mean? Because I want them all together. So now I'm going to have to rearrange things properly. Okay, moving on to the lit fic. Next, we've got Normal People by Sally Rooney. I swear I'm the last person on earth to read a Sally Rooney, so I must read it so I can let you know. Am I a Sally Rooney person or not? Passion Tide by Monique Rothie is a book that I got sent last year about missing Caribbean women, and the cover. So we're reading it. The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty is... The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty is Kaveh Akbar's and Tommy Orange's favorite book. So I'm very, very curious. An obituary... Oh, bitch. An online obituary writer, a young mother with a dark secret. The Bullet Swallower by Elizabeth Gonzalez James. This is a historical fiction. I bought this one last year, again, based on the cover alone. It's a family saga that tackles border politics. Madeline in the Dark by Julia Fine. I picked this one up at Barnes & Noble because I had not seen anyone talk about this book. And to this day, I think I've seen one person talk about this book. And that's so rare for me being in online spaces that I'm reading books that I've never heard of before. Venice in 717. Two young violinists beefing. And finally, for Lit Fit, we've got Homegoing by Yagasi. Again, historical fiction, family saga, count me in. Okay, we've got 3 sets left: cozy mystery, gothic, and horror. So let's get into the cozy mystery. I just discovered that I loved cozy mystery last year. We're going to start off with A Serial Killer's Guide to San Francisco, because I'm in San Francisco. And we've got The Village Library Demon Hunting Society by C.M. Wagner. A librarian with a knack for solving murders realizes there is something decidedly supernatural afoot in her little town in this cozy fantasy mystery. So not just a cozy mystery or a cozy fantasy, but a cozy fantasy mystery. I think all cozy fantasies should be mystery. The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong has one of the cutest little covers. This is about a wandering fortune teller who finds an unexpected family in a warm and wonderful debut fantasy, perfect for readers of Travis Baldree and Sangu Mandana. Now, I haven't read any Travis Baldree, but I have read this other author, and this is just so cute. I'm excited to read it and see if I'm a cozy fantasy person. A Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer. Murder is not her department. It's not like it used to be. Modern day Grim Reapers wear business casual, not black cloaks. What? And then, lastly in my cozy genre is going to be And then finally in the cozy genre, I've got A Half-Baked Murder by Emily George, a cannabis cafe mystery. The intrigue. All right, now we're getting into one of my favorite subgenres, the Gothic. The House on Biscayne Bay is an eerie, unpredictable tale that will leave even the most discerning readers in awe. This is a Gothic mansion in Miami. 2 women intertwine past and present. I love a dual timeline. I am really not a fan of the reread, but I try to reread at least one book every year. And this year it has got to be Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, one of my favorites. I haven't read it in at least 10 years. The Gothic of Gothics. Who wants to do a read along? Parting the Veil is a Gothic by Paulette Kennedy. Now, I read The Devil and Mrs. Davenport last year, and it was great, great, great. So I am super excited to read another book by her. This is about a woman who inherits an estate of a recently deceased aunt. She leaves behind a guilt-ridden past in New Orleans for... Okay, next up is Parting the Veil by Paulette Kennedy. This will be my second book by Paulette Kennedy, who wrote The Devil and Mrs. Davenport, which was like a 50s gothic that I read last year and absolutely loved. This is about a woman who inherits an estate from a recently deceased aunt, and she's leaving behind a guilt-ridden past in New Orleans for rural England and a fresh start. Next, we've got Unnatural Creatures by Chris Waldhair. This is a story about Frankenstein's women. Eerie, romantic, and exquisitely written. Ugh. Next, we have Unnatural Creatures by Chris Waldhair. Sorry, Chris. Next, we have Unnatural Creatures by Chris Waldhair. This is a novel about Frankenstein's women. The mother, the bride, the servant. The Secrets of Heartwood Hall is a novel about... The Secrets of Heartwood Hall by Katie Lumsden is a gothic mystery to read on a cold and stormy night. All right, horror, let's go. Let's get right into it. We're starting off with Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. Fernanda and Annalise are so close, they're practically sisters, a double image, inseparable. So how does Fernanda end up on the floor on a deserted cabin held hostage by one of her teachers? How does that happen? Listen to Your Sister by Nina Veal. The nightmares that haunt us and the family bonds that hold us together for those who love Jordan Peele films, Stranger Things, and The Other Black Girl. The Devil in Silver by Victor LaValle. If you have not read any Victor LaValle yet, this is your sign. I have read and loved Lone Women, and I have read and loved The Ballad of Black Tom. I highly, highly recommend both. Okay, so Devil in Silver, an inmate in a mental institution, a terrifying creature with the body of an old man and the head of a bison. This sounds scary. I'm a little scared. Red Rabbit by Alex Grecian. This was described as a Western horror. Got some horses on the back. I don't know. It's blurbed by a lot of people that I like, so I'm taking a chance. And Black Rivered Orchard by Chuck Wendig. I couldn't decide which Chuck Wendig I wanted to put on because the other books that I have from him that I haven't read yet are a series, but I knew that I had to include at least one book from him, so I went with the standalone because it reminded me of Rotten Apples, and I think this book is going to be rotten in the best way. Okay, so I honestly thought I was finished, but I have room on the shelf and I don't want to fill it with anything that isn't in my TBR jar. So I added 6 more books. I added Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. Now, I read Penance by Eliza Clark. I know this was most people's first experience, so I can't wait to catch up. I added From Below by Darcy Coates because I've never read a Darcy Coates. And if you're a horror reader, you know who Darcy Coates is. I added Mary by Nat Cassidy. This is a religious horror. I added Trees by Percival Everett because everybody says it's dark. I added Hex by Thomas Old Huvelt because it's been on my TBR forever. And if I didn't add it, I probably would end up unhauling it. And I love a good witch story. And it's very floppy, and I do like that. Finally, I added The Foxwife by Yangtze Chu. This is of a fantasy myth. Love it. Okay, so I may have done too much because now I have ended up with not one, but 2 TBR jars. And these don't even include my Indigenous book bingo books. Those will probably be another 2 TBR jars, but we're doing some canning. We're doing some pruning. We're doing hard labor, guys. Hard labor. Okay, that is it from me. My goal is to read maybe half of these this year. At least half of these this year. I don't know if I'm going to do it because, listen, I said I was only going to pick one from the TBR jar every month. But that's a picking from the jar. Like, my other books that I choose to read because of my mood should probably come from this shelf. Unless a new book releases, and then I have to read that book. You know what I mean? Okay, so that's it for me today. Come back to see my Indigenous book TBR, and I can talk about which books I've read on Indigenous book. Okay, that is it for my TBR work today. Come back next week to check out my Indigenous book bingo TBR, and I can talk about the books that I've read on that list and the books that I haven't yet, the ones that I'm most excited about. I cannot wait to get started picking from the jars. If you haven't already, be sure to like this, comment down below, tell me which book on my TBR looks the most interesting to you. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel. And also, if you are not a member of my reader community on Bindery, it is free to do and only takes a few seconds. I put the link down below. Come show support for Indigenous books. Have a great week. Okay, and here they are on the shelf. This is my new TBR, guys. Yep. So cute. I love my new TBR. And here are all of the books that I am moving to a different shelf. I didn't really think this through.